everybody, this is Ebony Love and I'm back with another video for the AccuQuilt Studio die cutter. Recently I was commissioned to make a wedding quilt for a new bride, and she wanted to have signature blocks on the back signed by her guests. If you've ever tried to make a signature quilt, you would realize that it's very difficult to get people to not sign their signatures in the margins where you have your seam allowance. So I came up with a technique that I'd like to share with you to help people not sign their signature blocks in the margins. The dies that I started with, the finished square is 6" for the back of her quilt. So I'm using the 6.5" square block that comes with the 12" die block set. So this is quilt block A, which is a 6.5" block. You can see this is actually a piece of paper that I've laid on the die. And what I've done is I've cut out a 6.5" square on this particular die. I also use this same die to cut out 6.5" squares from the fabric as well, and I'll show you that in a second. Now, what I want to make sure that people do is when they're signing the signature blocks, I do not want them to stitch in the margins or to sign in the margins. So I took quilt block F, which is from the same 12" block set. This block, or this square, is 4.75 inches wide, so you can see on the back here that this is a 4.75" square. And what I did is I used my silver Sharpie, which I'm famous for by now, to mark the edge of the 6.5" square. So what I've done is I've centered the 6.5" block over the 4.75" square. And when I do that and I mark the registration lines here, you can see there's a dotted line on the side here and a dotted line at the top. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe I can zoom in for you to so you can see that. So can you see that dotted line there at the top? So that dotted line is my registration mark, and that marks the halfway point of the block. So once I have done that, then I layer the 6.5" square over the 4.75" square, and what I get is a frame. You can see this frame here. So again, this is a 6.5" piece of paper, 6.5" square that I cut from a regular sheet of paper that I layered over the 4.75" square by marking by centering the 6.5" square over the 4.75" square and cutting out the shape. So I get a frame here. Now I also use the 6.5" die to cut my fabrics. Now before I cut the fabrics, first I actually fused them to a sheet of freezer paper. So just regular Reynolds Wrap freezer paper. And I actually have not just the 6.5" single die, but I also have the 6.5" multiple die. So to use that die, I actually cut a piece of fabric that is 13.5 inches wide to fit over that die and adhered the freezer paper to it. So these are actually, what you can see here is this is my fabric that was cut from the width of the fabric, the 40" width, 13.5" wide, and then I can use the multiple die cutter, the multiple 6.5 shape to cut those. So what I end up with is this beautiful stack of fused squares. And if I just handed these squares to people, they would write all the way to the margins, and we'd be cutting off people's signatures. So what I do is I actually take these frames, and I actually have a package of sticky dots. And I know you can hear me sticking the sticky dots here, but what I do is I take the sticky dots and I put the sticky dots in the corner. Don't know if you can see that, but there's one sticky dot in each corner, and I stick the frame using those sticky dots down to the to the 6.5-inch signature square. So again, it's fused with the freezer paper to give it stability. The frame is mounted with a sticky dot in each corner, and now I can have an entire stack of these prepared signature blocks with the margins intact, and this is a visual indicator for people of where not to sign. And so when I get these blocks back, all I have to do is take off the frame and they're ready to stitch up, and I don't have any signatures in the margin. So I thought I would share that with you in case any of you are doing wedding quilts or want to do signature quilts at some point in the future. It makes it really easy with the Studio to cut out all of these squares. So I hope you have fun, and I'll see you next time.